The San Diego skyline barely registered through the pre-dawn fog. 4:30 hours. Captain Nora Calloway stood outside the kennel complex at Naval Amphibious Base Coronado, listening to a sound that twisted something deep in her chest. The guttural snarl coming from behind reinforced steel doors was nothing like the playful bark she remembered. 18 months could turn loyalty into rage. 18 months could make a brother's partner forget everything he once was. A gunshot echoed somewhere on the distant training range. The crack of sound triggered something visceral. Her vision blurred at the edges. She was 19 again. The Utah desert stretched forever under a merciless sun. Cole stood behind her, one hand steady on her shoulder, the other pointing downrange toward a target she could barely see. "Control the breath," her brother said, his voice calm as still water. "Control the shot. Control the outcome." Her finger hovered over the trigger. 700 meters. The wind pushed against her cheek. "Don't think about the distance," Cole continued. "Think about the space between heartbeats. That's where you live." She exhaled, squeezed. The rifle bucked. Downrange, the target snapped back. Cole smiled. It was the last time she'd seen that smile for years. The memory shattered. Nora blinked hard, forcing herself back to the present. The kennel door loomed before her. Somewhere behind that steel, Havoc waited, or what was left of him. She pushed through the entrance. The interior smelled like disinfectant and something else. Fear. The kind that soaked into concrete and never left. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting everything in harsh white. Down the corridor, past empty kennels, past the ones that held dogs who'd bark and wag at her approach. There was one kennel that held only silence. Until she got close. Then the silence broke into something primal. 95 pounds of Belgian Malinois hit the chain-link fence with enough force to bend steel. The chain snapped taut 6 inches from Nora's face. Yellow eyes locked onto hers. Lips peeled back over teeth that could crush bone. The growl came from somewhere deep, somewhere beyond training, beyond reason. Nora didn't flinch. "Hello, Hav," she said quietly. "Been a while." The dog's ears flicked, just once. A micro-movement that might mean recognition or might mean nothing at all. Behind her, footsteps. Fast ones. Military police. 2 of them, hands already moving towards sidearms they hadn't quite drawn yet. "Ma'am, you're not authorized to be in this facility." Nora turned slowly, made no sudden movements. She pulled her ID from her jacket pocket and held it up. The MPs took it, scanned it, and their expressions shifted from aggressive to confused. "Captain Calloway," the older one read aloud. He looked at his partner, then back at Nora. "Ma'am, this access code is flagged above our clearance level." "Then I suggest you let me continue what I'm doing," Nora said. The MPs exchanged glances. The younger one spoke into his radio, voice low. A crackling response came back that Nora couldn't quite make out. The older MP handed back her ID. "You've got until 0600, ma'am. After that, we're under orders to escort anyone without standing authorization off base." They left. Nora turned back to the kennel. Havoc had retreated to the far corner, still growling, still watching, but something in his posture had changed. The aggressive forward lean had shifted into something more cautious, wary. She'd seen that look before. On men, on animals, on herself sometimes, when she caught her reflection after a bad night. It wasn't aggression, it was terror wearing an aggression mask. Nora spent the next 90 minutes sitting on the concrete floor outside Havoc's kennel. She didn't try to talk to him, didn't try to approach, just sat, breathed, let him remember her scent, if memory was even something he still possessed. At 5:57, she stood, walked away. Havoc lunged at the fence one more time, but the chain held. She didn't look back. The base was waking up. Morning PT formations jogged past in precise ranks. The smell of the ocean mixed with diesel fuel from the boat docks. Nora made her way across the compound toward the administrative building where Rear Admiral James Vickers kept his office. She'd never met Vickers, didn't know anything about him except what the basic research provided. 38 years in the Navy, destroyer command in the Gulf, solid record, no scandals, the kind of officer who rose through competence and patience rather than brilliance or connections. The kind of officer who wouldn't appreciate an unannounced captain showing up at his door. Nora planted herself in a chair outside Vickers' office at 6:15. His secretary arrived at 6:30, looked at Nora with professional suspicion, and informed her that the Admiral didn't take walk-ins. "I'll wait," Nora said. The secretary made a phone call, typed something on her computer, made another call. At 700, she told Nora that the admiral's schedule was completely full. "I'll wait," Nora repeated. Officers came and went. Some glanced at her. Most ignored her. A Navy captain camping outside an admiral's office wasn't unheard of, but it also wasn't normal. It suggested either desperation or stubbornness, and neither quality was particularly admired in the military hierarchy. At 11:45, the secretary's phone buzzed. She listened, looked at Nora with something that might have been pity, and nodded toward the inner office door. "5 minutes," she said. Nora walked in. Rear Admiral James Vickers sat behind a desk that probably weighed more than Havoc. The wall behind him displayed the usual collection of plaques, photographs with presidents and foreign dignitaries, and a shadow box containing his various medals. He didn't stand when she entered, didn't offer a handshake. "Captain Calloway," his voice was neutral, carefully so. "You've been camping outside my office for 6 hours." "Yes, sir." "You have no orders placing you on this base." "No, sir." "You have no official business here." "With respect, sir, I do." Vickers leaned back in his chair. The leather creaked. "Enlighten me." "Havoc, sir. The Category 5 MWD, currently held in Kennel Block D. I'm requesting transfer of custody." That animal killed 2 handlers and put a third in the hospital with injuries that ended his career. He's scheduled for euthanization tomorrow morning at 800, non-negotiable. Nora kept her voice level. "Havoc was my brother's dog, sir. Staff Sergeant Cole Calloway, Force Recon, killed in action 18 months ago. Under military protocol, I have the right to request reassignment of his MWD partner. Protocol applies to active duty handlers, Captain, not deceased ones, and certainly not to animals with a documented history of lethal aggression." Vickers picked up a folder from his desk, flipped it open. 3 separate behavioral assessments, all conclusive. "That dog is beyond rehabilitation." "Then let me take him off your hands, sir. I'll assume full responsibility. Sign whatever liability waiver you want." "This isn't about liability." Vickers closed the folder. "This is about public safety and unit integrity. That dog represents a threat. We don't transfer threats. We eliminate them." Something cold moved through Nora's chest. "Permission to speak freely, sir." "Denied. You have 30 seconds left of your 5 minutes, Captain." "Havoc saved my brother's life 4 times in Syria. Cole wrote about it in letters. 4 confirmed saves. That dog earned more than a lethal injection based on behavioral assessments written by people who don't understand what he's been through." Vickers stood. The meeting was over. "You have 24 hours to leave this base, Captain. After that, you'll face charges for unauthorized presence on a military installation." "Dismissed." Nora didn't move. "I'm not leaving without that dog, sir." "Then you'll be removed. Your choice is whether that happens voluntarily or in handcuffs." Vickers' expression didn't change. "I've read your file, Captain, Scout Sniper, exemplary record, Marine Corps Cross nominee. You don't strike me as someone who throws away a career over a dog. Don't prove me wrong." Nora held his gaze for 3 seconds longer than regulation allowed. Then she turned and walked out. The mess hall at 1300 was crowded with junior enlisted sailors grabbing lunch between training rotations. Nora sat alone at a corner table, not eating the food on her tray, just watching the door. She knew what was coming, had known since the moment she'd walked out of Vickers' office. Senior Chief Travis Holt found her at 1315. He was exactly what Central Casting would order if you asked for a senior SEAL. 42 years old, built like he was assembled from bridge cables, with a face that suggested he'd seen every flavor of bad the world could offer and hadn't been particularly impressed. He wore his uniform like some men wore skin. Natural. Inevitable. Holt pulled out the chair across from Nora without asking permission and sat down. He didn't say anything for a long moment, just looked at her with the kind of assessment that came from 2 decades of evaluating whether someone would hold up under pressure or crack like cheap pottery. "Your brother was a good Marine," Holt finally said. His voice was gravel rolling over concrete. "But you showing up here unannounced, camping outside the Admiral's office like some desperate family member who can't let go, it makes people uncomfortable." Nora met his eyes. "I'm not here to make people comfortable, Senior Chief. No, you're here to make a point about a dog that's already dead, just waiting for the paperwork to catch up." Holt leaned forward slightly. "I get it. I do. Your brother's gone. The dog's all you have left of him. But that animal in Kennel Block D, that's not your brother's partner anymore. That's something broken that should have been put down months ago." You ever make a shot at 847 meters, Senior Chief? The question seemed to throw him. His eyes narrowed slightly. What? 847 meters. That's your longest confirmed kill, isn't it? Fallujah, November 2019. Sniper hide in a bombed-out apartment building. Target was an HVT meeting with local militia. You put a round through a window the size of a cereal box from almost half a mile away. Holt's expression hardened. How do you know that? Because I make it my business to know who I'm talking to. Nora's voice didn't rise, but something in it shifted, became colder, sharper. Mine's 1,127 meters. Helmand Province, August 2021. Taliban commander on a ridgeline. Wind gusting to 15 knots. Temperature differential between the valley floor and my position meant I had to adjust for thermal layering most shooters don't even know exists. Spotter called it impossible. I called it Tuesday. She stood up, looked down at Holt. So when you talk to me about desperate family members who can't let go, Senior Chief, you remember who you're talking to. I'm not here because I'm emotional. I'm here because I'm right. She walked away, left her untouched tray on the table, felt Holt's eyes on her back the entire way to the door. That night, Nora did something that could end her career faster than any unauthorized base presence ever would. She broke into Kennel Block D. The security wasn't particularly sophisticated. This was a working kennel on a military base, not a black site prison. Card reader at the entrance, one camera covering the main corridor. The night shift handler made his rounds every 2 hours, predictable as a metronome. Nora timed her entry for 2,315, exactly 15 minutes after the handler had completed his last round. The card reader took her stolen access badge without complaint. She'd lifted it from a distracted kennel technician that afternoon. Would return it before dawn. Probably. Inside, the kennels were quieter at night, but not silent. Dogs shifted in their sleep. A few whimpered. One barked twice, then went quiet again. Nora moved down the corridor like smoke, making no sound, triggering no alarms. Havoc's kennel was at the end. She could hear his breathing before she could see him. Fast, shallow, the breathing pattern of something that never truly slept, just waited in darkness for the next threat. She stopped 3 feet from the fence, close enough to see him clearly in the dim emergency lighting, far enough to give him space. Havoc was already awake, had probably been awake since she'd entered the building. His yellow eyes tracked her movement with predatory focus. No growling this time, just watching, calculating. I know you remember, Nora said quietly. Somewhere under whatever they did to you, you remember Cole. You remember Syria. You remember the night outside Raqqa when that IED took out the transport and you pulled him from the wreckage before the secondary charge went off. Havoc's ears moved slightly, forward, then back, a confused gesture. Cole wrote me about it, Nora continued. Said you'd gone back into a burning vehicle for him. Said you'd refused to leave even when the flames reached the fuel tank. Said if it weren't for you, I'd be visiting his grave instead of just reading his letters. She took one step closer. The dog's muscles tensed, but he didn't lunge. Progress. Maybe. I'm gonna get you out of here, Hav. I don't know how yet. Don't have a plan that doesn't end with me in Leavenworth. But I'm not walking away. Cole didn't raise a quitter, and he didn't train a killer. Havoc made a sound. Not quite a growl, not quite a whine, something in between. Something that might have been confusion, or might have been the last remnant of recognition fighting its way through whatever trauma had rewired his brain. Nora reached into her jacket, pulled out a small cloth. It had been Cole's, a piece of his combat uniform she'd kept after the funeral. She held it up to the chain-link fence. Let the scent carry. Havoc's entire body language changed in an instant. The tension drained from his muscles. His ears came forward. He moved toward the fence, not lunging, not attacking, just approaching like he was moving through deep water. His nose pressed against the chain link, sniffed. Once. Twice. Then he backed away, sat down, looked at her, and whimpered. It was the smallest sound, barely audible, but it carried the weight of 18 months of confusion and pain and isolation. I know, Nora whispered. I know it hurts. I know you don't understand what happened. But I'm going to fix this, I promise. Behind her, a voice cut through the darkness like a blade. That's a promise you won't be able to keep, Captain. Nora turned, fast, hand instinctively moving toward a sidearm she wasn't carrying. Dr. Sarah Brennan stood in the corridor, maybe 10 feet away. She was younger than Nora expected. late 30s, dressed in civilian clothes that suggested she'd come here off duty. Dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, eyes that assessed with clinical precision. Breaking and entering, Brennan said. Unauthorized access to a restricted facility, theft of security credentials. That's 3 court-martial offenses before we even get to the part where you're attempting to interfere with a lawful euthanization order. Nora straightened, kept her hands visible. You going to report me, doctor? I should. Brennan walked closer, stopped about 5 feet away. But I haven't yet. Want to know why? Not particularly. Because I've been studying Havoc for 6 months. Behavioral analysis, psychological assessment, trauma response evaluation. And here's what I've concluded. That dog isn't aggressive. He's terrified. Nora's eyes narrowed. Then why did your report recommend euthanization? It didn't. My report recommended intensive rehabilitation with a handler who understands combat trauma, specifically someone with personal connection to his previous partner. Someone exactly like you, Captain. Brennan glanced at Havoc, then back to Nora. My report was overridden. By who, I don't know, but someone with enough authority to bury my recommendations and substitute their own. Why are you telling me this? Brennan reached into her jacket, pulled out a USB drive. Because I'm tired of watching good animals get destroyed because they inconvenience the wrong people. This contains security footage from this kennel. Footage that didn't make it into the official behavioral assessments. Footage you need to see. She held out the drive. Nora took it. There's a computer terminal in the admin office, Brennan continued. 3rd door on the right. No cameras in that room. You've got maybe 20 minutes before the next handler sweep. If this is some kind of trap, then I'm doing a terrible job of it. Brennan turned to leave, then paused. Your brother was right about Havoc, Captain. He's not a killer. He's a survivor. But survival looks a lot like aggression when you're trapped in a cage with no way out. She disappeared down the corridor. Nora stood there for 5 seconds, weighing options, calculating risks. Then she moved. The admin office was exactly where Brennan had said. The computer terminal booted up without requiring credentials. Someone had already logged in and left the session active. Deliberate. Brennan had planned this. Nora inserted the USB drive. The footage started playing automatically. Black and white. Timestamp in the corner showing dates from 4 months ago. The camera angle showed Havoc's kennel from above. The dog was sleeping. Peaceful even. Then the kennel door opened. 2 men entered. Military uniforms. Kennel staff, based on their insignia. One of them carried something in his hand. Nora leaned closer to the screen. A shock collar. Industrial strength. The kind used for aggressive animal control. What happened next made her jaw clench, hard enough to hurt. They put the collar on Havoc while he was still groggy from sleep. Then one of them pulled out a remote control, pressed a button. Havoc's entire body convulsed. He yelped, tried to get away. The kennel was too small, nowhere to run. The handler pressed the button again. Longer this time. Havoc hit the ground, legs kicking, foam forming at his mouth. The second handler was laughing. His mouth moved, saying something the camera couldn't pick up. Probably a joke. Something funny about watching a 95-pound dog get electrocuted for entertainment. They did it 17 more times over the next 40 minutes. Sometimes for seconds. Sometimes for long enough that Havoc stopped, moving entirely, and Nora thought they'd killed him. But then he'd twitch, breathe, and they'd do it again. On the 19th shock, something in Havoc changed. The fear transformed, became something else. He lunged at the first handler, fast, faster than the footage almost captured. His teeth caught the man's forearm, tore through fabric and flesh. The handler screamed, dropped the remote. The second handler tried to pull Havoc off, got bit for his trouble. Not a killing bite, a warning bite. The kind that said, back off or the next one goes deeper. Both handlers retreated, left the kennel, sealed the door. On the footage, Havoc stood in the center of his cage, bleeding from where the collar had burned his neck. Breathing hard, eyes wild. The video ended. Nora sat in the darkness of the admin office, watching her reflection in the black computer screen. Her hands had curled into fists without her realizing it. She forced them open, took a breath, then another. Havoc hadn't attacked handlers because he was aggressive. He'd attacked handlers because they'd tortured him. Self-defense. Pure and simple. But someone had buried that footage. Someone had written reports claiming unprovoked aggression. Someone had pushed through a euthanization order, despite evidence to the contrary. Someone wanted Havoc dead. The question was why. Nora ejected the USB drive, pocketed it, shut down the computer and left the admin office. Her mind was already working through the implications, building scenarios, calculating next moves. She made it halfway across the compound before her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She answered it anyway. Captain Calloway. The voice was male, older, carried authority like some people carried scars. This is Staff Sergeant Michael Yates. I'm the senior handler at Kennel Block D. I understand you've taken an interest in one of our Category 5 animals. Word travels fast. Small base. People talk. A pause. I think we should meet. There are things you need to understand about that dog. I'm listening. Not over the phone. Tomorrow. 600. Training Yard 7. Come alone. The line went dead. Nora stood in the middle of the compound, phone still to her ear, weighing whether this was opportunity or trap. Probably both. Usually was. She went back to her temporary quarters, a small room in the transient officer housing, bare walls, government-issue furniture, the kind of place designed for people passing through, not staying. She didn't sleep, just sat on the edge of the bed, turning the USB drive over in her hands, thinking about electrical burns on a dog's neck and handlers who laughed while they worked. At 05:45, she dressed, headed for Training Yard 7. The yard was empty when she arrived. Just bare dirt and obstacle courses and the smell of ocean salt carried on the morning breeze. Nora positioned herself with her back to the sunrise, made anyone approaching squint into the light to see her clearly. Old habit. Yates showed up at 06:03. He was older than she expected, late 40s, maybe early 50s, the kind of weather that came from decades in the elements. He walked with a slight limp, old injury, compensated for, but never fully healed. He stopped about 10 feet away, kept his hands visible. Captain, Staff Sergeant, you watched the footage. It wasn't a question. Nora didn't bother confirming. You were one of the handlers who used the shock collar. Yates's jaw tightened. I was following orders. Whose orders? Does it matter? He looked away, looked back. I've been training military working dogs for 26 years, Captain. Never once had to use a shock collar set above level 3. Never once had to torture an animal to get compliance. But 6 months ago, I get new directives, new protocols, new supervision. From who? Contractor Oversight, Ironclad Solutions. You heard of them? Nora had. Defense contractor, big one, the kind that showed up whenever there was money to be made from military operations. They run dog training programs. They run everything now, or they're trying to. Yates pulled something from his pocket, held it up, his right hand, palm facing out. The skin was mottled with burn scars, circular patterns, electrical burns. Shock collar backfired during one of the sessions, Yates said. Faulty wiring. I got hit with the same voltage I'd been using on the dogs. Put me in the hospital for 3 days. When I came back, I tried to file a complaint, tried to report the program. Got told to keep my mouth shut or lose my pension. So you kept your mouth shut? For 6 months, yeah. His hand dropped. But I couldn't keep doing it. Couldn't keep watching good dogs get destroyed because some contractor wanted to test their new training methodology. So when I heard you were asking questions, I figured maybe it was time someone with actual authority started getting answers. I don't have authority here, Staff Sergeant. I have 24 hours to leave base before I face charges. Then you better work fast. Yates reached into his other pocket, pulled out a folded piece of paper. I shared paper. Handed it to her. That's a list of 8 MWDs that went through the same program Havoc did. 5 are dead. 2 are scheduled for euthanization this week. 1 is missing. Nora unfolded the paper, scanned the names, breeds, handler assignments. Missing how? Transferred off base 3 weeks ago. No documentation, no official orders. Just gone. I asked about it. Got told to mind my own business by people who outrank me by enough that I couldn't push back. Who's running this program? Who gave the orders? Colonel Raymond Harker, retired Army, Vietnam vet, runs Ironclad Solutions. He's got a $24 million contract with the Department of Defense to develop what he calls resilience training protocols for military working dogs. The brass loves him because he's a decorated war hero. The contractors love him because he makes them money. And the dogs? Yates's voice went flat. The dogs are just test subjects. Nora folded the paper, put it in her pocket. You're taking a risk telling me this. No bigger than the risk you're taking being here. Yates turned to leave, then stopped. One more thing, Captain. Your brother, Cole Calloway. I knew him. Not well, but enough to know he was a good Marine. He came to the kennels sometimes. Visited Havoc. Last time I saw him was about 3 weeks before he died. He was asking questions. Same questions you're asking now. About the training protocols. About Ironclad. About Harker. Something cold moved down Nora's spine. What are you saying? I'm saying your brother died in a training accident. On a base where training accidents are reviewed by people Harker has connections to. On a base where inconvenient questions have a way of getting people reassigned or silenced or worse. Yates met her eyes. Be careful, Captain. You're not the first person to try standing up to Ironclad, but you might be the last one who gets the chance. He walked away, left Nora standing in the training yard as the sun climbed higher and the base came fully awake around her. She had 20 hours left before Vickers' deadline expired. 20 hours to find proof. 20 hours to build a case that couldn't be buried or ignored or explained away. She pulled out her phone, started making calls. The first was to a friend at JAG. The second was to a journalist she'd worked with on a story about military equipment fraud. The third was to someone she'd hoped never to call again, but circumstances had a way of making hope irrelevant. By 900, she had appointments scheduled. By 1000, she had 3 different leads on Harker's background and financial connections. By 1100, she was deep into public records that showed Ironclad Solutions had received not 1 but 7 different DoD contracts in the past 2 years, totaling over $60 million. By 1200, she realized someone was following her. The tale was professional but not invisible. A man in civilian clothes, mid-30s, fit, the kind of fit that came from current military service, not gym membership. He kept a steady 75 feet back, changed his position regularly, used crowds for cover. Nora led him on a 20-minute walk that went nowhere in particular. Let him think he was being subtle. Then she ducked into a building, went up 2 floors, came down the back stairwell, and came up behind him while he was still watching the front entrance. She got close enough to tap his shoulder before he realized she'd flanked him. He spun, hand moving toward a concealed carry she'd already spotted. She was faster, had his wrist locked and torqued before the weapon cleared leather. Easy, she said quietly. We're on base. Lots of witnesses. Lots of cameras. Whatever you're thinking about doing, think harder. The man stopped resisting. Smart. I'm just observing, Captain. No law against that. Who sent you? Harker? Vickers? I don't know what you're talking about. Nora increased pressure on his wrist. Just enough to hurt. Not enough to damage. Last chance. Who sent you? Dr. Brennan? He said it through gritted teeth. She wanted to make sure you didn't do anything stupid before tonight. Nora released his wrist, stepped back. Before tonight, what? The man rubbed his arm. You've got a meeting, 1900 hours. Building 347. Dr. Brennan will explain everything. Why should I trust her? Because right now, Captain, she's the only person on this base who's actually on your side. He turned and walked away, didn't look back. Nora stood there, calculating. Building 347 was in the older section of base. Administrative offices that had been converted to storage. Not exactly a high-traffic area. Good place for a meeting. Also a good place for an ambush. She had 8 hours to decide whether to show up or not. She spent 6 of those hours gathering more information. Called in favors. Pulled threads. Built a picture of Ironclad Solutions that looked clean on the surface but got uglier the deeper she dug. Harker had connections to 3 senators, 2 House representatives, and a Deputy Secretary of Defense. The man was protected at levels that made her 24-hour deadline look like a joke. At 1845, she made her decision. Building 347 was exactly as isolated as she'd expected. The lights were off in most of the windows. One office on the 2nd floor showed illumination. She approached carefully, checked corners, watched for surveillance, found none. The office door was unlocked. Dr. Brennan sat behind a desk covered in files. She looked up when Nora entered. You came. Good. You've got 5 minutes to convince me this isn't a setup. Brennan stood, walked to the window, looked out at the darkening base. This morning you watched footage of Havoc being tortured. This afternoon you met with Staff Sergeant Yates. An hour ago you accessed public records showing Ironclad's DoD contracts. You've been busy. You've been watching. I've been documenting. There's a difference. Brennan turned back to her. Captain, I need you to understand something. I work for Ironclad Solutions. I'm contracted as their animal behavioral specialist. But I didn't sign up to watch dogs get electrocuted for profit. I signed up because I believed in improving military working dog programs through science. Noble, you want a medal? I want your help. Brennan walked back to the desk, picked up a file. This is my official report on Havoc, the one that got buried. It concludes that he's suffering from acute stress trauma, likely caused by systematic abuse, and recommends immediate removal from the current environment with transfer to a handler who has prior relationship with the animal. You, specifically. She held out the file. Nora took it, flipped through pages of clinical language that all said the same thing. Havoc was traumatized, not aggressive. I submitted this 6 weeks ago, Brennan continued. It was rejected by Admiral Vickers. He said the evidence didn't support my conclusions and ordered me to revise my assessment. When I refused, I was told that my contract wouldn't be renewed and I should consider my career trajectory carefully. So you caved? I revised the report, submitted conclusions I didn't believe, watched Havoc get scheduled for euthanization. Brennan's voice went quiet. And then you showed up. Started asking the same questions I'd been asking. Started digging into the same things I'd been told to ignore. And I realized I had a choice. I could keep my mouth shut, keep my career, keep collecting paychecks from people who torture animals. Or I could do the right thing. Nora studied her. Why now? Why wait until I showed up? Because alone, I'm just a contractor making accusations against a decorated colonel and a rear admiral. But with you, with your brother's connection, with your record and your clearance and your willingness to burn your own career for this, we might actually have a chance. It made sense, too much sense, which made Nora suspicious. What do you want from me? Go to Admiral Vickers tomorrow morning. Present this file. Demand a review of Havoc's case. Force him to explain on the record why he rejected my original conclusions. Brennan picked up another file. This one thicker. And if he refuses, we go to the Inspector General with this: documented evidence of animal abuse, financial irregularities in Ironclad's contracts, and some interesting coincidences about your brother's death. Nora went very still. What coincidences? Cole Calloway died in a training accident, fall from a cliff during a solo navigation exercise. But his medical examiner's report shows defensive wounds on his hands and forearms, bruising consistent with close quarters combat, and trace evidence of sedatives in his blood work that wasn't included in the official toxicology report. The room felt smaller suddenly. How do you have access to that? Because I requested Cole's file after you showed up. Wanted to understand who you were. Found some things that didn't add up. Brennan slid the file across the desk. I think your brother was asking too many questions about Ironclad. I think he found out about the abuse program, and I think someone made sure he couldn't tell anyone. Nora picked up the file, opened it, saw Cole's autopsy photos, saw the marks Brennan had described, saw her brother's face, gray and still, reduced to evidence in a folder. She closed the file. If what you're saying is true, if Harker had my brother killed, then going to Vickers is pointless. Vickers is either complicit or powerless. Maybe, but we have to try the chain of command first. Protocol matters. If we skip steps, they'll use it against us. Brennan checked her watch. You've got 14 hours left on Vickers' deadline. Havoc gets euthanized in 11 hours. We're running out of time. Nora stood there, holding her dead brother's file, thinking about electrical burns and buried reports and convenient accidents. Thinking about a dog who'd saved Cole's life 4 times and was about to be killed because he'd defended himself against torture. All right, she said, tomorrow morning, 700, I'll meet Vickers. Make the case. Force his hand. Brennan nodded. Good, I'll be there as your supporting witness. Bring the USB drive. Bring Yates's testimony. Bring everything we have. Nora turned to leave. Captain, Brennan called after her. One more thing. When you confront Vickers tomorrow, he's going to tell you that I fabricated this story, that I'm a disgruntled contractor making false allegations, that you should ignore everything I've said. Why would he say that? Brennan's expression went cold. Because I'm going to tell him to, because that's what I've been ordered to do, and because this whole conversation was bait to see if you'd take it. The world tilted. Nora's hand moved toward her sidearm, found empty holster. She'd left her weapon in her quarters. You're working for them, Nora said. This whole thing was a setup. I work for people who pay me, Captain, same as everyone. Brennan picked up her phone, typed something. Admiral Vickers will expect you in his office at 700 tomorrow. You will present your evidence. He'll review it, And then he'll inform you that Dr. Sarah Brennan has filed a formal complaint alleging that you threatened her, fabricated evidence, and attempted to coerce her into supporting false allegations against Ironclad Solutions and Base Command. You're destroying the only chance Havoc has. I'm doing my job, which is making sure problematic people like you don't interfere with lucrative contracts like Ironclads. Brennan stood, walked to the door, opened it. You have 2 hours to leave this base before MPS come to arrest you for threatening a DoD contractor. I suggest you use them wisely. She left. The door closed. Nora stood alone in the office, surrounded by files that would never be submitted, evidence that would never be seen, justice that would never arrive. Outside the window, the base lights flickered on as darkness fell. Somewhere in Kennel Block D, Havoc waited for a morning that would be his last. And Nora had exactly 0 moves left that didn't end with her in handcuffs or worse. The USB drive in her pocket felt like it weighed 50 pounds. Cole's file felt heavier. She looked down at her hands. They weren't shaking. Should have been. Weren't. Control the breath, control the shot, control the outcome. Cole's voice, from memory, from the desert, from a time when problems could be solved with proper breathing and steady hands. But this problem was bigger than breath control. This problem had money and power and connections behind it. This problem wore stars on its shoulders and wrote checks to senators. This problem had already killed her brother. Would kill Havoc in 11 hours. Would kill her career in 2. Unless Nora pulled out her phone, dialed a number she'd hoped never to use. It rang 4 times before someone answered. Fisher, a young voice said. Lieutenant Wade Fisher, junior SEAL officer, 26 years old, idealistic in ways that would either get him promoted or killed depending on which admiral noticed first. Lieutenant, this is Captain Calloway. We met briefly at the mess hall yesterday. I need a favor that could end your career. A pause, then, I'm listening. How would you feel about checking a KIA report that doesn't quite add up? Specifically, Staff Sergeant Cole Calloway, Force Recon, died 18 months ago in what was officially ruled a training accident. Why would I do that? Because Senior Chief Holt once told you that the job of a junior officer is to ask questions senior officers don't want to answer. And because I think my brother was murdered, and because in about 10 hours the only witness to that murder is going to be euthanized unless someone with actual authority starts asking the same questions I've been asking. Another pause, longer this time. What makes you think I have any authority worth mentioning, Captain? Because you're a SEAL, and SEALs don't leave people behind. Even when those people are dead, even when those people are dogs. The line went quiet. Nora waited. Let the silence work. Let the hook set. Finally, send me everything you have. I'll look into it. No promises. That's all I'm asking. She hung up, checked her watch. 1947 hours. She had 13 minutes before Brennan's 2-hour deadline started. 13 minutes to decide whether to leave base or stay and face arrest. She stayed because Cole hadn't raised a quitter. And because somewhere in that kennel, Havoc was waiting for someone to remember he was more than just an asset to be disposed of when convenient. Tomorrow morning would bring whatever it brought. Arrest, court-martial, the end of everything she'd built. But tonight, she had work to do. Files to copy, evidence to secure, a case to build that couldn't be buried even if she was. Nora Calloway walked out of Building 347 into the California night, carrying her brother's file, carrying the weight of promises made to the living and the dead, carrying the kind of determination that came from knowing exactly how bad things could get and deciding to push forward anyway. Somewhere in the darkness, Havoc howled, one long, mournful sound that carried across the base like a prayer or a warning or maybe both. Nora heard it, smiled, kept walking. The fight wasn't over. Not by a long shot, but the opening moves had been made. The pieces were in position, and tomorrow, when Admiral Vickers told her she was out of time and out of options, she'd show him exactly how dangerous a Marine Scout sniper could be when you backed her into a corner with nothing left to lose. The deadline came and went, 800 hours. Nora Calloway sat on a concrete barrier outside the main gate of Naval Amphibious Base Coronado, watching MPs escort base personnel through security checkpoints. She'd been there since 0630, visible, deliberate, making it clear she wasn't hiding, making it clear she wasn't leaving. Her phone had buzzed 17 times in the past hour. Unknown numbers, messages she didn't read, Calls she didn't answer. They could say whatever they wanted. She'd made her choice. Havoc had maybe 3 hours left before someone walked into that kennel with a syringe and ended everything. 3 hours to find leverage. 3 hours to build a case that couldn't be ignored. 3 hours was enough, had to be. A white pickup truck pulled up to the gate. Civilian vehicle. The driver showed credentials to the gate guard, got waved through, then pulled over to the shoulder 20 feet from where Nora sat. The door opened. Lieutenant Wade Fisher stepped out. He was younger than she'd expected from their brief phone call. Maybe 26. Still had that fresh-faced quality that came from not having seen enough bad things yet to understand how bad things could really get. But his eyes were older than his face. That happens sometimes. Combat aged certain parts faster than others. Fisher walked over, stood next to her, looked at the base entrance like he was trying to decide whether walking back through that gate was the smartest or stupidest thing he'd do today. "Senior Chief Holt sent me," Fisher said. "Said you told him to check Cole Calloway's KIA report. Said to ask himself why a Force Recon Marine died on a naval base in San Diego instead of overseas." "And did he check?" "We both did. Spent 4 hours last night going through files we probably shouldn't have access to." Fisher pulled out a folded map from his jacket, opened it, pointed to coordinates marked in red pen. "Your brother's official death location, training accident during solo navigation exercise. Fell from a cliff. Body recovered 3 days later." Nora looked at the coordinates. "Those aren't on base." "No, ma'am. They're 40 miles east, middle of nowhere, desert scrubland. No cliffs for 30 miles in any direction." Something cold moved through her chest. So the official report is fabricated. Or the coordinates are wrong, or someone moved the body before recovery, or a dozen other explanations that all add up to the same thing. Fisher folded the map. "Your brother didn't die where they said he died, which means everything else in that report is suspect." "Did Holt tell you to tell me this?" "Holt told me to use my judgment. Said you were either the most dedicated sister he'd ever met or the craziest Marine. Said either way you deserve to know what we found." Fisher looked at her directly. "He also said if I help you, I should be prepared to explain my career choices to a court-martial board. So I'm asking you straight up, Captain, is this worth ending my career over?" Nora held his gaze. "My brother was murdered. The dog he served with is being executed in 3 hours to eliminate a witness. And the people responsible have enough power to make all of this disappear without anyone asking questions. So yeah, Lieutenant, it's worth it." Fisher nodded slowly. "Then we better work fast." They spent the next hour in Fisher's truck, pulled over on the shoulder, reviewing everything Nora had gathered. The USB footage of Havoc being tortured, Yates's testimony about Harker's program, the list of 8 MWDs that had gone through the same abuse, Cole's autopsy report with the defensive wounds that didn't match the official story. Fisher read it all in silence. His jaw got tighter with each page. By the time he reached the toxicology report, showing sedatives in Cole's system, his hands had curled into fists. "This is attempted murder at minimum," Fisher said quietly. "Probably successful murder, depending on what actually happened to your brother, and systematic animal abuse, and fraud, and conspiracy to obstruct justice." He looked up. "We need to take this to NCIS, or JAAG, or someone with actual authority to investigate. I tried that, got told my evidence was fabricated, and I'd be arrested if I didn't leave base immediately." "By who?" "Admiral Vickers." Fisher went very still. "The base commander ordered you to leave and threatened arrest. Through Dr. Brennan, who apparently works for Harker despite presenting herself as an ally last night." Nora closed the file. "I'm out of official channels, Lieutenant. The chain of command is either compromised or complicit, which means we go around it or we watch Havoc die and whoever killed Cole gets away with it. Going around the chain of command is called mutiny, Captain. Only if we fail." Fisher stared at her. Then slowly he smiled. It was the kind of smile that suggested he'd been waiting his whole career for permission to do something this stupid. "What do you need?" "Access to base records, specifically transfer orders and movement logs from 18 months ago. I need to know who was where when Cole died. I need to trace the paper trail from Harker's program authorization to who approved it at what level. That's all stored in the admin building. Classified section. Requires clearance we don't have and security we can't bypass." "Can't bypass during the day," Nora corrected. "At night, with the right credentials and a good story, we can get in and out in under 5 minutes." Fisher checked his watch. It's 09:47 now. Havoc's execution is scheduled for 1100. We don't have time to wait for nightfall. Then we don't wait. Nora pulled out her phone, called a number she'd programmed in last night. It rang twice. Yates, the voice answered. Staff Sergeant, it's Captain Calloway. I need you to do something that'll probably get you fired. A pause. I'm listening. Delay Havoc's euthanization, I don't care how. Paperwork error. Equipment malfunction. Veterinarian running late. Anything that buys me 3 hours. Captain, the execution order came from Admiral Vickers himself. I can't just... You can and you will, because if Havoc dies, the only physical evidence linking Harker to my brother's murder disappears, and you'll spend the rest of your life knowing you helped cover up a killing. The line went quiet. Nora waited, let the weight of it settle. 3 hours, Yates finally said. After that, I'm out of excuses and out of my job. Make it count. He hung up. Fisher was looking at her with something between admiration and concern. You've got a way of motivating people, Captain. I've got a way of telling the truth and hoping they care. Nora stood up. Come on, we've got work to do. They drove on to base using Fisher's credentials. No challenges at the gate. Just a wave through from guards who recognized a SEAL officer and didn't ask questions. The admin building sat near the center of the complex. 3 stories, concrete and glass. The kind of architecture that prioritized function over aesthetics. Fisher parked in the visitor lot, killed the engine. We walk in during broad daylight in uniform and just access classified records. That's the plan. That's the plan. It's a terrible plan. It's the only plan we've got. You coming or not? Fisher grabbed a folder from his back seat. Empty folder. Prop for looking official. I'm coming, but when this goes sideways, I'm telling them you threaten me. Fair enough? They walked into the building like they owned it. Confidence was 90% of infiltration. The other 10% was looking busy enough that nobody wanted to interrupt you. Nora had learned that in Scout Sniper School. Fisher had probably learned it trying to avoid senior enlisted personnel who wanted to assign additional duties. The classified records section was on the 2nd floor, behind a locked door with a card reader and a camera. Fisher swiped his ID. The light stayed red. Wrong clearance level. Plan B, Fisher asked quietly. Nora pulled out the access badge she'd stolen yesterday. The one she was supposed to have returned but hadn't. She swiped it. The light went green. The lock clicked. You just happen to have security credentials that work on classified sections, Fisher said flatly. I happen to acquire them from someone who wasn't paying attention. That's theft. Only if we get caught. They went inside. The records room was smaller than expected. Rows of filing cabinets, computer terminals, everything organized with military precision. A clerk sat at a desk near the entrance, typing something on an outdated keyboard. The clerk looked up. Can I help you? Fisher held up his empty folder. Lieutenant Fisher, SEAL Team 5. I need to pull movement logs from 18 months ago, cross-referencing personnel transfers with training incidents. Do you have authorization? Do I need it? Fisher's tone shifted, became harder. The voice of someone who'd been questioned one too many times by people who should know better. I've got a dead Marine, a missing after-action report, and a timeline that doesn't add up. So unless you want to explain to my CO why you obstructed an official inquiry, I suggest you point me toward the files I need. The clerk hesitated, glanced at Nora. And you are? Captain Calloway, Marine Corps. I'm consulting on the case. I'll need to verify. You'll need to do your job, Fisher interrupted. Files, now, or I escalate this to someone who actually gives a damn about dead Marines. It worked. Authority plus aggression, plus just enough justification to make arguing seem harder than complying. The clerk pointed to a terminal in the corner. Movement logs are digital. Access code is on the card next to the keyboard. Training incident reports are in Cabinet 7, subsection D. Appreciate it, Fisher said. Walked to the terminal like he'd been there 100 times before. Nora went to Cabinet 7, found subsection D, pulled the drawer open. Inside were files organized by date. She found the month Cole died, pulled the entire section, carried it to a table. Fisher was already typing. Fast. His fingers moved with practiced efficiency. Military personnel learned to navigate terrible computer systems with speed born of necessity. Wait too long and someone would show up asking what you were doing. Nora opened the first file. Training incident report. Marine Lance Corporal. Broken leg during rappelling exercise. Not Cole. She moved to the next, then the next. Found Cole's report 6 files deep. The official story was exactly what Fisher had described. Solo navigation training. Fell from cliff. Body recovered after 3-day search. Cause of death, blunt force trauma consistent with fall. No suspicious circumstances noted. But attached to the report was something that made her pulse spike. A handwritten addendum, dated 2 days after Cole's body was found, signed by Admiral Vickers. Incident reviewed, recommend case closure. No further investigation warranted. Deceased's personal effects secured. MWD partner transferred to Kennel Rehabilitation Program per standard protocol. Transferred to Kennel Rehabilitation Program. That was Harker's program, the one that tortured dogs until they broke. Vickers had personally signed off on sending Havoc into hell. Captain, Fisher said quietly, you need to see this. Nora walked over. Fisher had pulled up movement logs, personnel transfers, specifically transfers involving Ironclad Solutions contractors. The screen showed a list of names, dates, and locations. One name appeared 17 times in the month before Cole died. Dr. Raymond Harker, Colonel U.S. Army, retired. Each entry showed him accessing base facilities, kennel operations, training grounds, and on 3 occasions, the same coordinates where Cole's body was supposedly found 40 miles east. Harker was on base the day your brother died, Fisher said, and he'd been to that location 3 times in the 2 weeks prior. Whatever happened there, he knew about it, maybe participated in it. Nora stared at the screen. The pieces were connecting. Cole discovered Harker's torture program, reported it through proper channels. Harker found out, arranged a meeting off base under false pretenses, drugged him, killed him, made it look like an accident, then used his authority to ensure Havoc ended up in the same program, probably hoping the dog would become so unstable he'd be euthanized before anyone thought to ask questions. 18 months of planning, 18 months of covering tracks, 18 months of torture inflicted on an animal who'd done nothing except be a witness to murder. I need to copy this, Nora said, all of it. Every file that connects Harker to Cole's death. Fisher pulled a USB drive from his pocket. Already on it. But Captain, even with this evidence, we're still looking at a decorated colonel with connections to the DoD and an admiral who's actively protecting him. We can't just walk into Vickers' office and demand arrests. No, but we can extract Havoc before they execute him, secure the primary witness. Then we take everything we have to NCIS and force them to investigate whether Vickers likes it or not. Extract Havoc how? That dog is in a maximum security kennel with armed guards and kill orders already issued. We can't just walk in and an alarm cut through the building. Loud, piercing, the kind that meant someone had triggered security protocols. The clerk at the front desk stood up fast, grabbed a phone, listened. His face went pale. He looked directly at Nora and Fisher. Locked down, he said. Building's locked down. Nobody in or out. MPs inbound. Fisher looked at Nora. Told you this would go sideways. Not yet, it hasn't. Nora grabbed the files she'd pulled, shoved them into Fisher's folder. How many exits does this building have? 3. Front entrance, rear service door, emergency stairs on the west side. Which one has the least security? Doesn't matter. Lockdown means they're all sealed. Fisher checked his phone. I've got a text from Holt. Says base-wide alert just went out. Unauthorized personnel and classified section. All security directed to this building. Nora calculated options. Fewer than she wanted. More than 0. The emergency stairs. Those dump out where? Loading dock. But it'll be locked from the outside. Can you unlock it? Not without tools I don't have and time we definitely don't have. The sound of boots in the hallway. Multiple pairs. Moving fast. Maybe 30 seconds before they reach the records room. Nora made a decision. Give me the USB drive. What? The drive, now. Fisher handed it over. Nora shoved it into her pocket. Then she pulled out her sidearm, ejected the magazine, handed both pieces to Fisher. When MPs come through that door, you tell them I forced you at gunpoint to access these files. You had no choice. You were following orders under duress. Captain, I'm not throwing you under the... That's exactly what you're doing. Because if we both go down, Havoc dies and nobody investigates Cole's murder. But if you walk out of here clean, you can finish what we started. Nora grabbed his shoulder, looked him in the eye. This is an order, Lieutenant. Follow it. Fisher's jaw worked. He wanted to argue, wanted to push back. But he was a junior officer and she was a captain, and sometimes rank mattered more than fairness. Yes, ma'am, he said quietly. The door burst open. 6 MPs, weapons drawn, shouting commands that overlapped into noise. Nora raised her hands, dropped to her knees, let them swarm her. felt zip ties bite into her wrists, felt hands searching her pockets, finding nothing except the USB drive they'd take as evidence. The lead MP looked at Fisher. "Lieutenant, you all right?" "Yeah. She forced me to access classified files, threatened me if I didn't comply." "We'll need a statement." "You'll get one." They hauled Nora to her feet, started walking her toward the door. She looked back once, caught Fisher's eye, saw him nod, just barely, a promise, an understanding. He'd finish this, one way or another. The MPs took her to a holding cell in the base brig. Small room, concrete walls, steel bench, single camera in the corner recording everything. They left her there for 2 hours without explanation. Standard procedure: let the suspects stew, build anxiety, make them more willing to talk when interrogation finally started. Nora spent those 2 hours thinking about Cole, about the last letter he'd sent before he died, about the line he'd written near the end. "If something happens to me, make sure Havoc goes to someone who understands him. Don't let them treat him like equipment. He's more than that." She hadn't understood what he meant at the time, thought it was just Big Brother being sentimental about his dog. Now she understood. Cole had known something was wrong, known he was in danger, written that line as insurance, as a message to whoever read it after he was gone. Make sure Havoc goes to someone who understands him. Nora understood him now, understood what he'd been through, understood why he attacked handlers who tortured him, understood that every aggressive act was self-defense and every moment of fear was earned through systematic abuse. The door opened. Admiral Vickers walked in, alone, no MPs, no lawyers, just him. He sat down on the bench across from her, didn't speak for a long moment, just looked at her like he was trying to solve an equation that didn't quite balance. "Captain Calloway," he finally said, "you've created quite a situation." "I've exposed quite a situation, sir. There's a difference. You broke into classified records, coerced a junior officer, stole government property. Those are serious charges. My brother was murdered. His dog was tortured for 18 months. A defense contractor is running a criminal enterprise on this base with your knowledge and approval. Those are more serious." Vickers' expression didn't change. "You have no proof of any of that. I have files showing Harker accessed the location where Cole died multiple times before his death. I have autopsy reports showing defensive wounds inconsistent with the fall. I have video evidence of systematic animal abuse. I have testimony from Staff Sergeant Yates about torture protocols. I have—" "You have nothing," Vickers interrupted. "The USB drive you were carrying when arrested? Corrupted. Data unrecoverable. The files you pulled? Missing. The testimony you claim to have? Yates will deny everything if questioned under oath. You've got theories and accusations and nothing that would hold up in any court." Nora leaned forward. "You're protecting Harker. Why?" "I'm protecting the integrity of this base and the careers of good service members who don't deserve to be dragged through conspiracy theories by a grieving sister who can't accept that her brother died in a training accident. He was murdered. He fell from a cliff during a solo navigation exercise. The investigation was thorough. The conclusion was sound. Nothing you found changes that." "Then why are you here?" Nora kept her voice level. "If you're so confident in the official story, why come down to a holding cell personally to tell me I'm wrong? Why not let the MPs and JAG handle this? Unless you're worried, unless there's something in those files that makes you nervous." Vickers stood, walked to the door, stopped with his hand on the handle. "You'll be processed and released in 6 hours. After that, you're banned from this base permanently. If you attempt to return, you'll be arrested on site. If you continue making allegations, you'll face charges for defamation and obstruction of justice. If you contact any member of this command, it will be considered harassment." "What about Havoc?" "The animal was euthanized at 1100 hours as scheduled. Humanely, peacefully, he's no longer suffering." Something broke inside Nora's chest. A clean snap. The kind of break that didn't heal right even after years. "You killed him," she said quietly. "We put down an aggressive animal that posed a danger to base personnel. Standard protocol." Vickers opened the door. "I'm sorry about your buddies, Captain. I truly am. But this crusade of yours ends now. Go home. Grieve. Move on." He left. The door closed. The lock engaged. Nora sat in the silence, felt the weight of failure settle over her shoulders like a wet blanket. Havoc was dead. The evidence was gone. Cole's murder would never be investigated, and she'd burned every bridge trying to do the right thing. 3 hours later, they released her, processed her out, handed back her belongings minus the USB drive, escorted her to the gate, told her if she came back, she'd be arrested. She walked to the parking lot where she'd left her rental car that morning, climbed inside, sat behind the wheel without starting the engine. Her phone buzzed. Text message, unknown number. North parking lot, blue pickup, we need to talk. Nora looked up, scanned the lot, found the blue pickup 3 rows over. Someone sat in the driver's seat. She couldn't make out features from this distance. She started her car, drove over, parked next to the pickup. The passenger window rolled down. Senior Chief Travis Holt sat behind the wheel. He didn't smile, didn't offer greeting, just unlocked the passenger door and gestured for her to get in. Nora switched vehicles, closed the door. If you're here to tell me I screwed up, save your breath. I'm aware. I'm here to tell you Havoc's not dead. Nora went completely still. What? Yates delayed the execution like you asked. Paperwork error, then equipment malfunction. Then the veterinarian called in sick. Bought 3 hours like you wanted. But when Vickers found out about the delays, he ordered MPs to handle it themselves. Sent them to the kennel at 1100 with a sidearm and instructions to shoot the dog and file the paperwork later. But you said, I said Havoc's not dead because when those MPs got to the kennel, the dog was already gone. Someone extracted him before they arrived. Opened the kennel, let him out through the maintenance tunnels under the complex. Disappeared with him before anyone knew what happened. Who? Holt reached into his jacket, pulled out a photo, security camera still, grainy, black and white, showed a figure in tactical gear leading a large dog through a concrete corridor. The figure's face was obscured, but the body language was familiar. Nora looked closer, the gear, the stance, the way the person moved. That's you, she said. That's me. Holt took the photo back. I figured if we're going down for this, might as well go down all the way. Plus, Fisher made a compelling argument about brotherhood and not leaving people behind, even when those people are dogs. Where is he? Safe house, off base, civilian rental about 15 miles from here. Fisher's there now keeping watch. Dog's traumatized as hell, but stable. Holt started the engine. Question is, what do we do now? We've got a stolen military asset, falsified records, and about 12 hours before someone connects the dots and comes looking. Nora's mind was already moving, calculating. The USB drive they took from me, was it the only copy? Fisher made backups, sent them to 3 different email addresses, including his personal account and mine. We've still got the evidence. And Cole's files, the ones I pulled from the records room, Fisher grabbed them before MPS secured the scene. They're in the truck, back seat. Nora looked behind her, found a box filled with file folders. Everything she'd pulled, everything that connected Harker to Cole's death. Why are you helping me, she asked. You don't know me, don't owe me anything. Holt kept his eyes on the road. I knew your brother, not well, but enough to know he was the kind of Marine who'd do the right thing even when it cost him everything. Figure his sister's probably cut from the same cloth. Plus, I'm tired of watching good people get buried by bad people who happen to outrank them. He drove in silence for a few minutes, then pulled into a strip mall parking lot, parked near the back, killed the engine. There's something else, Holt said. Something Fisher found in the movement logs after you got arrested. Transfer orders for an MWD that went missing 3 weeks ago, the one Yates mentioned. What about it? Transfer wasn't to another base, wasn't even to another military facility. Transfer was to a civilian address, Industrial Park, 40 miles east of here. Same coordinates where your brother supposedly fell from that cliff that doesn't exist. The same coordinates Havoc had typed the night before. Nora felt pieces clicking together. Harker's running a black site, off base, no oversight, testing his torture protocols on dogs he's officially transferred out of the system. That's what we think. And if your brother found out about it, if he went there to investigate, Harker killed him to protect it, which means there might be evidence at that location, physical evidence, maybe even witnesses. Holt pulled out his phone, showed her a map with the coordinates marked. It's an abandoned pharmaceutical warehouse, shut down 8 years ago, supposed to be condemned and empty. But it's not. Satellite imagery from last week shows vehicle traffic, heat signatures. Someone's using that building for something. Holt looked at her directly. We could go to NCIS with what we have, file reports, hope they investigate, trust the system to work eventually. Or we go there tonight, see what Harker's hiding, get evidence that can't be explained away or buried. Force this into the open whether Vickers likes it or not. That's illegal. Breaking and entering, trespassing on private property, conducting an unauthorized investigation. Yeah, it is. Nora thought about Cole, about havoc, about 18 months of torture and lies and murder covered up by men who wore uniforms and swore oaths and then violated both because profit mattered more than honor. What time do we leave? She asked. 2,200 hours. Full dark. Minimal civilian traffic. Fisher's coming. Probably Yates, too, if he wants to salvage what's left of his conscience. Holt handed her an address written on a scrap of paper. Safe house. Get there by 2,000. We'll brief the full plan. Nora took the paper. What about Brennan? Holt's expression hardened. What about her? She set me up, fed me evidence, played helpful, then betrayed me to Vickers. But last night at the safe house, Nora trailed off. The memory of Brennan's face, the way she'd looked when she'd confessed about finding Cole's blood work. I think she might have been playing both sides, Harker and us, trying to figure out which way to jump. You trust her? Not even a little, but she knows things we don't, has access we don't have. And if she really did find Cole's toxicology reports in Harker's files, she's already committed enough crimes that we have leverage over her. Holt considered it. I'll reach out, feel her out, see if she's willing to switch teams for real this time. No promises. That's all I'm asking. Nora climbed out of the truck, stood in the parking lot, felt the California sun on her face, felt something that might have been hope or might have been desperation. Sometimes the two were indistinguishable. Her phone buzzed. Another text. Same unknown number from before. You want the truth about your brother? Come to the warehouse tonight. Come alone. You'll get answers. Nora stared at the message. It could be a trap. Probably was a trap. Harker knew she was investigating, knew she had evidence, knew the smart move was to eliminate her before she could make noise loud enough that important people had to listen. But it could also be legitimate. Someone on the inside who wanted out. Someone with information they couldn't share through official channels. Someone who'd been waiting for the right person to trust. She texted back, "Who is this?" The reply came instantly. Someone who made mistakes. Someone who wants to fix them. Someone who knows what really happened to Cole Calloway. 2,200 hours. Come alone or don't come at all. The phone went dead. Number disconnected. Untraceable. Nora deleted the messages, climbed into her rental car, drove toward the address Holt had given her, thought about the choice ahead. Follow the plan with Holt and Fisher and maybe Yates. Go in as a team, safe, smart, tactical. Or follow the mysterious text. Go alone. Walk into whatever trap or truth waited in that warehouse. Risk everything on the chance that someone inside Harker's organization had grown a conscience. She knew which choice Cole would make. He'd taught her that. When the stakes were highest, when the odds were longest, when the right thing looked like the stupid thing, you didn't hesitate. You moved, you acted, you accepted the consequences and dealt with them as they came. The safe house was exactly what the name suggested. Small, unremarkable, the kind of rental property that existed in every military town. Fisher sat on the porch when she arrived. Havoc lay at his feet. The dog's head came up when Nora stepped out of her car. His ears perked. For a moment, she thought he might lunge, might attack. Instead, he stood, walked toward her, slow, cautious, stopped 3 feet away, sat down, looked at her with those yellow eyes that had seen too much and understood too little. Nora crouched, extended her hand, palm down, non-threatening. Havoc sniffed. Once, twice. Then he pressed his head against her palm. A gesture. Simple. Profound. Trust offered when trust had been broken too many times to count. She scratched behind his ears, felt him lean into the touch, felt the tension drain from his body. 18 months of fear and pain and isolation. 18 months of being treated like equipment, like a weapon, like something disposable. But underneath all that trauma, underneath the aggression and the terror, the dog Cole had loved was still there, still loyal, still waiting for someone to remember he was more than just a military asset. You and me both have, Nora whispered. You and me both. Fisher came down from the porch. Holt called, said he filled you in, said you were probably going to do something but you're stupid and I should try to talk you out of it. Did he say what stupid thing I'm planning? No, but I'm guessing it involves that warehouse and a lack of backup. Am I close? Nora stood, Someone texted me, said they have information about Cole, said to come alone tonight at 2200. And you're actually considering it. I'm more than considering it. Fisher shook his head. Captain, with all due respect, that's the most obvious trap I've ever heard. Someone wants you isolated and vulnerable. They're using your brother as bait. You go there alone, you're not coming back. Maybe, or maybe it's someone who wants out and doesn't know who else to trust. Then they can trust our whole team. We go in together, cover each other, extract whoever's offering information. Do this smart instead of reckless. And if whoever texted sees 4 people instead of 1, they disappear and we lose the only lead we have. Fisher looked at her for a long moment. You know I can't let you go alone. You can and you will, because this isn't your fight, Lieutenant. It's mine. Your brother served with my unit's predecessors. That makes it my fight too. Marines don't abandon Marines, even dead ones, even when the Marine in question is being stubborn as hell about accepting help. Nora almost smiled. Almost. You sound like Cole. Then he was smart. You should listen to him more. The afternoon bled into evening. Holt arrived with more files, more evidence, more pieces of a puzzle that kept getting bigger the more they uncovered. Yates showed up around 1900, looked 10 years older than he had that morning, said he'd been questioned by NCIS for 3 hours about Havoc's disappearance, told them he knew nothing, lied to federal investigators to protect a dog he'd helped torture. I'm done, Yates said. After tonight, after whatever happens, I'm retiring, putting in my papers. Can't do this job anymore. Can't look at another dog and wonder if I'm the reason they're broken. Nobody argued with him. Some things broke you in ways that early retirement was the only mercy available. At 2100 hours, they gathered around a laptop, pulled up satellite imagery of the warehouse, studied approaches, marked entry points, built a plan that assumed hostility and prepared for the worst. At 2145, Nora made her final decision. She'd go to the warehouse, but not alone. The team would position themselves outside, hidden, ready to breach if things went wrong, ready to extract her if the situation turned violent. Compromise, the kind that satisfied nobody but gave everyone a chance to survive. They loaded into 2 vehicles. Nora rode with Holt. Fisher and Yates took the second truck. Havoc stayed at the safe house, sedated, safe, away from whatever darkness waited in the desert. The drive took 40 minutes, 40 minutes of silence, 40 minutes of thinking about Cole and choices and consequences. The warehouse appeared through the darkness like a monument to abandonment. 3 stories, concrete and steel, windows boarded over, chain link fence surrounding the property, signs warning of hazardous materials and structural instability. But lights glowed inside, faint, filtered through cracks in the boards, and vehicles sat in the parking lot. 4 of them. Expensive. The kind contractors that drove when government money flowed freely. Holt parked half a mile away, killed the lights. Last chance to reconsider. Not reconsidering. Didn't think so. He handed her an earpiece. Comms, we'll be listening. You get in trouble, you say the word, and we come through every entrance that building has. Nora fitted the earpiece, checked her sidearm, confirmed the magazine was full and the safety was off. If I'm not out in 30 minutes, assume compromise and extract. Negative. If you're not out in 30 minutes, we're coming in. Holt. Non-negotiable, Captain. You don't get to sacrifice yourself and call it a win. We all go home, or none of us do. She looked at him, saw the set of his jaw, the determination in his eyes, the kind of loyalty that came from watching too many good people die alone because someone decided their mission mattered more than their life. 30 minutes, she agreed. She got out, walked toward the warehouse, alone, visible, making no effort to hide her approach. If this was a trap, she wanted whoever said it to think they'd won. Wanted them confident, overconfident. The front entrance was chained shut, but a side door stood open. Deliberate, invitation or ambiguity. She went through. Inside was darkness punctuated by emergency lighting, concrete floors, industrial equipment long since stripped and sold, the smell of chemical residue and decay, and something else, something alive, breathing, multiple sources, coming from deeper in the building. Nora moved forward, hand on her weapon, every sense sharp, every nerve ready. A voice cut through the darkness, female, familiar. You came. Dr. Sarah Brennan stepped into the light. She looked different than before, tired, scared, like someone who'd made too many wrong choices and run out of ways to justify them. I came, Nora said. Now tell me about my brother. First, you need to see something. Brennan led her deeper into the warehouse, down a corridor, through a series of rooms that had been converted into something that looked like laboratory space, equipment, computers, and cages. 7 of them, each one holding a dog. Military working dogs, Belgian Malinois, German Shepherds, all of them showing signs of abuse, matted fur, visible injuries, eyes that track movement with predatory focus born from trauma. Harker's test subjects, Brennan said quietly, the ones that went missing from official records. He brings them here, tests his protocols, pushes them until they break, then disposes of them when they're no longer useful. These dogs are alive. Why haven't they been disposed of? Because they're not broken yet. Harker's looking for a specific response pattern, complete obedience without attachment. A dog that'll work for any handler without bonding, without loyalty, just pure function. That's impossible. Canine psychology doesn't work that way. No, it doesn't. But Harker's convinced if he tortures them enough, if he breaks them completely, he can rebuild them into perfect weapons. And the DoD keeps writing checks because the promise of expendable, transferable K9 units is too attractive to pass up. Nora looked at the dogs, thought about havoc, thought about what 18 months in this place would have done to him. Where's Cole? Brennan's face went pale. Follow me. They went deeper, past the laboratory, past storage rooms filled with equipment that looked more suited to interrogation than animal training, to a section of the warehouse that had been reinforced. Steel doors, electronic locks, the kind of security that suggested someone was being kept rather than stored. Brennan stopped in front of a door, put her hand on the lock, hesitated. What I'm about to show you, Captain, you need to understand. When I found out, I tried to stop it, tried to report it, but by then I was too deep, too complicit. They had leverage over me, threatened my family, my career, everything. Open the door. Brennan entered a code, the lock disengaged, the door swung open. Inside was a cell, small, bare concrete, a cot, a bucket. And on that cot, barely visible in the dim light, sat a man, emaciated, bearded, scarred, but alive. Nora's breath stopped. The man looked up, his eyes focused slowly, like someone who'd been in darkness too long and light had become painful. When he spoke, his voice was rough, damaged, but unmistakable. Nora? It was Cole, her brother, alive. After 18 months of believing him dead, after 18 months of grief and rage and guilt, alive. Nora's legs almost gave out. She grabbed the door frame, forced herself to breathe, forced herself to think through the shock. How? She managed. They said you died. They buried you. I was at your funeral. Cole tried to stand, failed, sat back down. They buried someone, not me. Harker. He found out I was investigating his program, confronted me. When I wouldn't back down, he had his people grab me, drugged me, brought me here. 18 months. You've been here 18 months. Felt longer. Cole's eyes moved past her, found Brennan. She's been helping me, bringing food, medicine, keeping me alive when Harker wanted me dead. Nora looked at Brennan. The doctor was crying, silent tears that tracked down her face. I couldn't get him out, Brennan said. Couldn't report it without implicating myself. Couldn't live with leaving him here. So I did what I could, kept him breathing, kept him sane, waited for someone who could actually do something. And then I showed up. And then you showed up. Brennan wiped her face. I set you up because Harker ordered me to, but I also left you breadcrumbs. The footage, the files, enough to make you keep digging. I gambled that if you were half the Marine your brother said you were, you'd find this place eventually. Before Nora could respond, her earpiece crackled. Holt's voice, urgent. Captain, we've got company. 4 vehicles approaching fast. Armed personnel, you need to extract now. Outside, the sound of engines. Tires on gravel. Doors slamming. Then gunfire. Automatic weapons. The distinctive crack of rifle rounds. The trap had sprung, just not the way anyone expected. Nora grabbed Cole, pulled him to his feet. He was lighter than she remembered. Weaker, but he could stand, could move. Back exit, Brennan said, through the lab. There's a loading dock on the east side. They ran, Cole stumbling, but keeping pace. Brennan leading, Nora covering their 6 with her weapon drawn. More gunfire, closer now. Then Holt's voice again in her ear. We're engaged, multiple hostiles, armed contractors. We'll hold them as long as we can, but you need to move. They burst through the laboratory, past the cages where dogs barked and snarled, past equipment that would never be used again. Toward the loading dock Brennan had mentioned, the door ahead exploded inward. Armed men in tactical gear, 4 of them, weapons raised. Nora fired first. 2 rounds, center mass. The lead contractor dropped. The others scattered for cover. "Go!" Nora shouted. "Get Cole out!" Brennan dragged Cole toward a side exit. Nora laid down covering fire. 3 more rounds. Suppressing, not killing. Buying seconds they didn't have. Then someone grabbed her from behind, strong arms. Trained hold. She twisted, broke free, spun with her weapon coming up. Colonel Raymond Harker stood 3 feet away, unarmed, smiling. "Captain Calloway," he said. His voice was calm, reasonable. The voice of someone who'd spent decades convincing people that terrible things were necessary. "You've caused quite a disruption. You murdered my brother. Your brother was going to destroy 18 months of research and $60 million in contracts. I made a tactical decision. You kept him prisoner, tortured him for a year and a half. I kept him alive. Could have killed him cleanly. Chose mercy instead. And this is the thanks I get." Harker gestured around them. "You've ruined everything, Captain. The program, the contracts, my reputation, all because you couldn't let the dead stay buried." He wasn't dead. He was to everyone who mattered. Harker's smile faded. "You should have left well enough alone. Should have trusted the system, should have believed the official reports. Now look at the mess you've made." Behind Harker, his contractors were regrouping, 6 of them now, all armed, all waiting for orders. In her ear, Holt's voice. "Captain, we're pinned down. Can't reach you. 30 seconds to breach from our position. Hold on." 30 seconds was eternity in a gunfight. Nora kept her weapon trained on Harker. "Call them off. Let us walk out. End this before more people die." "I don't think so. You've got evidence, witnesses, a living victim. Can't let any of that reach the outside world. So here's what's going to happen. My men are going to kill you, and your brother, and Dr. Brennan for her betrayal. Then we're going to burn this warehouse to the ground, erase everything, and tomorrow the official story will be that a disgraced Marine captain in a troubled contractor died in an unfortunate accident while trespassing on private property. Vickers won't protect you after this. Vickers will do exactly what I tell him, same as he's done for the past 3 years. I own him, Captain, just like I owned this base, just like I owned your brother's death. You've been fighting ghosts, shadows. You never had a chance." Harker raised his hand, signaled to his contractors. They raised their weapons. Nora had maybe 2 seconds, maybe less. She could shoot Harker, take him down, but his men would kill her before she got a second shot. Or she could die for cover, save herself, let Cole and Brennan die. Neither option was acceptable, so she chose option 3. She pressed her earpiece, spoke loud enough for Holt to hear. "Breach now, all entrances, light them up." Then the world exploded into action. Windows shattered. Flashbangs detonated. Smoke grenades filled the room. And through the chaos came Holt and Fisher and Yates, weapons drawn, moving with the practiced efficiency of men who had spent careers training for exactly this moment. The contractors scattered. Returned fire. The warehouse became a war zone. Nora dove behind cover, returned fire, watched Harker disappear into the smoke, lost him in the chaos. Then Cole's voice, weak but urgent. "Nora, the dogs!" She looked. The cages. The 7 dogs Harker had been torturing. The chaos, the gunfire, the smoke. It was driving them into panic. They were hurling themselves against the cage doors, breaking teeth on steel, bleeding, terrified. Brennan was already moving toward them, unlocking cages, releasing animals that might attack her, or might run, or might do nothing except cower in corners. Nora made a choice. Stopped shooting, started running, toward the cages, toward the dogs, toward saving something instead of destroying something. She reached the first cage, threw the door open. A German shepherd lunged out, ran past her, disappeared into the smoke. Second cage, Belgian Malinois. This one hesitated, looked at her with eyes that asked if this was another trick, another test. She stepped back, gave it space. It ran. Third cage, fourth, fifth, releasing trauma and terror and letting it flee into the California night. The gunfire was dying down. Harker's contractors were either down or retreating. Holt's voice in her ear. Building secure. Hostiles neutralized or fled. We need to move before law enforcement arrives. Nora reached the last cage, opened it, a Belgian Malinois, smaller than the others, younger. It came out slowly, approached her, sniffed her hand. Then it licked her fingers, once, gently, before running after the others. Brennan appeared through the smoke, supporting Cole, both of them alive, both of them moving. Harker? Nora asked. Gone, fled through the back. We'll find him. The evidence? Brennan grabbed the computer servers, everything Harker had on the program, names, dates, contracts, all of it. They made it outside. The night air tasted like freedom, like survival, like the beginning of something instead of the end. Police sirens in the distance, growing closer. Someone had reported the gunfire, which meant explanations, questions, complications. But that was tomorrow's problem. Tonight they'd won, barely, incompletely, but definitively. Cole put his hand on Nora's shoulder. His grip was weak, but real. You found me, he said. Didn't think anyone would. You're my brother. Of course I found you. And Havoc? Safe, waiting for you. Cole smiled. First time in 18 months. Good, that's good. They heard barking in the distance. The dogs they'd released, running through the desert, free for the first time in months, maybe forever. And somewhere in that darkness, Nora knew justice was waiting to be served. The fight wasn't over. Harker was still out there. Vickers still had power. The system was still broken. But for the first time since this began, Nora believed they could win. Not today, maybe not tomorrow, but eventually. The police arrived 14 minutes after the first shot was fired. By then, the desert had swallowed most of the evidence and the night had hidden the rest. Nora sat in the back of an ambulance, watching EMTs work on Cole. Her brother was alive but fading. 18 months of captivity had hollowed him out in ways that went deeper than physical starvation. His eyes tracked movement but didn't quite focus. His hands shook when he tried to hold the water bottle they'd given him. He needs a hospital, the lead EMT said. Real medical care, not field triage. How long can he wait? Nora asked. He shouldn't wait at all. But if you're asking how long before it becomes critical, maybe an hour, maybe less. Senior Chief Holt appeared at the ambulance doors. His tactical vest was scorched from a near miss. Blood on his hands that probably wasn't his. Local PD is asking questions, lots of them. We need a story that holds together. The truth. The truth gets us arrested for breaking and entering, unlawful imprisonment of military assets, conducting unauthorized investigations, and about 12 other charges I can think of before breakfast. Holt looked past her at Cole. How is he? Alive, barely. Then we make sure he stays that way long enough to testify. Holt pulled out his phone, showed her a screen. Fisher contacted NCIS 2 hours ago, told them we had evidence of a defense contractor running illegal operations on military personnel, gave them the coordinates. They're inbound, Italia 20 minutes. Will they believe us? Depends on what Brennan grabbed from those servers. If she got what she says she got, we've got documented proof of everything. Harker's program, the torture protocols, the financial records showing payoffs, even security footage from inside that cell where they kept Cole. Nora looked across the parking lot. Brennan sat on the ground, surrounded by hard drives and laptops she'd pulled from the warehouse. Fisher and Yates stood guard over her, weapons drawn, watching for threats that might still be out there in the darkness. Where's Harker? Nora asked. Gone. Fled during the firefight. Left his contractors behind, probably halfway to Mexico by now if he's smart. He's not smart, he's arrogant. Arrogant people don't run, they lawyer up and fight. Then we better make sure our case is airtight before he has time to build his defense. NCIS arrived in force. 6 vehicles, 20 agents. Led by a woman in her 50s who introduced herself as Special Agent Victoria Chen and immediately started separating witnesses for individual statements. Nora told her story, all of it, start to finish, the torture footage, Yates' testimony, the records showing Harker at the location where Cole supposedly died, the discovery of Cole alive in a cell, the gunfight, the escape. Chen listened without interrupting, took notes, recorded everything. When Nora finished, the agent sat back and studied her for a long moment. That's quite a story, Captain. It's the truth. Truth and story aren't mutually exclusive. Question is whether I can prove it. Chen gestured to the warehouse. My team is processing the scene now. If what you're telling me holds up, if Dr. Brennan's evidence supports your claims, then we're looking at one of the largest contractor fraud cases in DoD history, possibly the largest. What about my brother? Your brother is a victim of kidnapping, false imprisonment, and aggravated assault at minimum. He'll need to give a statement when he's medically able. But right now, my priority is securing the evidence before someone with more authority than me decides it needs to disappear. Vickers, Chen's expression didn't change. Rear Admiral Vickers is a person of interest in this investigation. I'm not at liberty to discuss ongoing inquiries, but I will say that any attempt to interfere with evidence collection or witness testimony will be met with immediate legal action, regardless of rank. It wasn't a promise, but it was close enough. They transported Cole to Naval Medical Center, San Diego. Nora rode with him in the ambulance, held his hand, watched him drift in and out of consciousness. Every time his eyes opened, he looked around like he expected to wake up back in that cell. Every time he saw her, confusion gave way to something that might have been relief or might have been disbelief. "You're real," he said once, voice barely a whisper. "Not another hallucination." "I'm real. They showed me videos of you, of Mom and Dad, said you'd all forgotten me, moved on, said nobody was looking. We never stopped looking. I never stopped." Cole's grip tightened on her hand. "Havoc. Where's Havoc?" "Safe house. With friends. He's okay, Cole. Traumatized, but okay." "He remembers me?" "He typed out the coordinates to find you. Cole, you trained him to type, to remember sequences. That's how we knew where to look." Something that might have been a smile crossed Cole's face. "Always said that dog was smarter than half my unit. Guess I was right." The hospital took him immediately. Emergency surgery to address internal damage from prolonged malnutrition and untreated injuries. Nora wasn't allowed past the surgical floor, just told to wait. That waiting was all she could do. She found a chair in the waiting room, sat down, closed her eyes for what felt like 5 seconds, and opened them to find Holt sitting next to her. "You sleep?" he asked. "Don't remember. What time is it?" 0600. "You've been here 8 hours. Surgery finished 2 hours ago. They've been trying to reach you, but you were out cold." Nora stood too fast. The room tilted. Holt caught her arm, steadied her. "He's stable, critical but stable. They've got him in ICU. You can see him, but only for a few minutes." Cole looked smaller in the hospital bed, connected to machines that beeped and hummed and kept track of functions his body had forgotten how to manage on its own. His eyes were closed. Breathing was assisted by a ventilator. The doctor standing next to the bed had the kind of expression that suggested he'd seen worse, but not often. "Captain Calloway," the doctor said, "I'm Dr. Reeves. I performed your brother's surgery. We've stabilized him, but his condition is serious. 18 months of captivity caused significant damage. Malnutrition, dehydration, broken bones that healed improperly. Evidence of repeated head trauma that's resulted in what appears to be traumatic brain injury. Will he recover? Physically, with time and proper care, most of the damage can be repaired. But the brain injury," Dr. Reeves paused, chose his words carefully. "We won't know the full extent until he regains consciousness. There may be memory issues, cognitive impairment, personality changes. The scans show damage to areas responsible for executive function and emotional regulation." "You're saying he might not be the same person?" "I'm saying we need to prepare for that possibility while hoping for the best outcome." Nora looked at her brother, thought about the Cole she'd known, the Marine who'd written letters home full of terrible jokes and detailed descriptions of desert sunsets. The brother who'd taught her to shoot and to think and to never back down when something mattered. That Cole might be gone, replaced by someone who looked like him but functioned differently, thought differently, remembered differently. "Can he hear me?" Nora asked. "Possibly. We encourage family members to talk to patients in medically induced comas. Some studies suggest it helps with recovery." Nora moved to the bedside, took Cole's hand. It was warmer than it had been in the ambulance. Better circulation, better care, better hope. "You're going to be okay," she said quietly. "I don't care what the doctors say. I don't care what the scans show. You're a Calloway. We don't quit, we don't break, and we don't let anything keep us down. So you're going to wake up, you're going to recover, and you're going to help me finish what you started." Cole's hand twitched, just slightly, might have been involuntary muscle response, might have been something more. "Havoc's waiting for you," Nora continued. "He's been waiting 18 months. Don't make him wait any longer." She stayed for 5 more minutes. Then the nurses asked her to leave, give Cole time to rest, give the medications time to work. Holt was waiting in the hallway. "NCIS wants you back at the warehouse. They found something you need to see." The warehouse looked different in daylight. Less menacing, more pathetic. Just an abandoned building where terrible things had happened because people with power decided profit mattered more than morality. Agent Chen met them at the entrance, led them through the laboratory section to the cell where they'd found coal. NCIS techs were everywhere, photographing, collecting samples, building a case one piece of evidence at a time. "We found something in the ventilation system," Chen said. She pointed to a vent cover that had been removed. "Your brother hid materials up there, notes, a journal, and this." She held up a phone, old model, cracked screen, held together with tape in desperation. "Cole's phone," Nora said. "We thought it was lost when he died. He smuggled it into captivity somehow. Used it to document everything. Dates, years, who visited him, what they said, what they did." Chen turned on the phone. The battery was almost dead, but it functioned. "There's 18 months of entries here, including video and audio recordings of conversations with Harker." She pressed play. The video was dark, shaky, but the audio was clear. Harker's voice. "You should have stayed quiet, Calloway. Should have kept your mouth shut about things that didn't concern you. Now look where we are." Cole's voice, weaker than Nora remembered, but still recognizably his. "You can't keep me here forever. Someone will notice. Someone will ask questions." "No one's asking questions. Your death was ruled accidental. Your body was buried with full military honors. As far as the world is concerned, you're a memory, and memories don't testify." "What about Havoc? Your dog?" "He's serving a more useful purpose now, teaching us how to break the bond between handler and animal. How to create K9s that work for anyone, anywhere, without attachment. Very profitable research. Your sacrifice is contributing to science. That dog saved my life 4 times. You're torturing him because I wouldn't back down. I'm advancing military capability. There's a difference." The video ended. Chen pocketed the phone. "We've got 17 more recordings like that, all of them admissible, all of them documenting Harker's confession to kidnapping, false imprisonment, and conspiracy to commit fraud. Combined with Dr. Brennan's server data, we have enough to bring charges against Harker and everyone involved in this program." "Including Vickers?" "I can't comment on that. Agent Chen, with respect, I'm not asking as a witness. I'm asking as the sister of a man who was tortured for 18 months while a rear admiral covered it up. Is Vickers going to face justice, or is his rank going to protect him?" Chen looked at her for a long moment. "Captain, I've been doing this job for 23 years. I've seen admirals walk away from things that would put enlisted personnel in Leavenworth for life. I've seen contractors buy their way out of charges that should end careers and destroy companies. The system is designed to protect people at the top and punish people at the bottom." "That's not an answer." "No, but it's the truth." Chen's expression hardened. "That said, I've also seen cases where the evidence is so overwhelming and the crimes are so egregious that not even rank can save you. This might be one of those cases. But I need your help to make it stick." "What do you need?" "Testimony. From you. From Cole when he's able. From everyone involved. On the record. Under oath. Documented so thoroughly that no lawyer and no admiral can make it disappear." "You'll get it." The investigation took 3 days. 3 days of statements and depositions and evidence collection. NCIS processed the warehouse. Found torture equipment, medical records, financial documents showing payments from Harker to offshore accounts linked to Vickers. Found bodies, 2 of them, buried in the desert half a mile from the warehouse. Identified as former MWD handlers who'd reported animal abuse in Harker's program. Reported it and disappeared shortly after. Murder charges added to the list. On the 4th day, NCIS arrested Admiral Vickers. Did it publicly, at his office, in front of subordinates and media cameras that had somehow been tipped off about the timing. Vickers denied everything, called it a witch hunt, called Nora a disgruntled Marine pursuing a vendetta, called the evidence fabricated. Then Agent Chen held a press conference and played Cole's recordings, showed financial documents, presented testimony from Dr. Brennan, Staff Sergeant Yates, Lieutenant Fisher, and Senior Chief Holt. The denial stopped. Harker was harder to find. He'd fled to Mexico like Holt predicted, but Mexico had extradition treaties and NCIS had jurisdiction, and 3 weeks after the warehouse raid, federal marshals brought him back in chains. His arraignment was scheduled for a Tuesday morning. Nora attended, sat in the back of the courtroom, Watched a decorated colonel who'd once served his country with honor stand before a judge and plead not guilty to 17 counts of fraud, kidnapping, murder, and conspiracy. The judge set bail at $5 million. Harker posted it within an hour. Walked out of the courthouse flanked by lawyers who cost more per hour than most people made in a month. He saw Nora on his way out, stopped, looked at her with something that might have been respect or might have been calculation. "This isn't over, Captain," he said. "No, it's not. But you've already lost. You just don't know it yet." Harker smiled. "We'll see." His lawyers pulled him away, into a waiting car, gone before anyone could ask more questions. Nora walked back to her car, found Holt leaning against the hood. "You know he's going to fight this," Holt said. "Use every legal trick, every technicality, drag it out for years." "I know. And there's a chance he wins. Gets off on some procedural bullshit, walks away clean. There's always a chance. So why do you look like someone who just won?" Nora opened her car door. "Because he had to post bail. Because his reputation is destroyed. Because every military contract he ever had is under review, and his company's stock dropped 40% in 3 weeks. Because people know what he did, and no amount of legal maneuvering can erase that." She looked at Holt. "He might beat the charges, but he'll never beat the truth." The trial was set for 6 months out. Time for both sides to prepare. Time for Cole to recover enough to testify. Or not recover. The doctors were less optimistic with each passing week. Cole had woken from a coma after 2 weeks, but waking didn't mean healing. The brain damage was worse than initial scans suggested. He could speak but struggled with words. Could walk but needed assistance. Could remember the warehouse and the torture but couldn't always remember what year it was or whether their parents were alive or dead. "It might improve," Dr. Reeves said. "With therapy and time, we sometimes see significant recovery from TBI, but it might not. You need to prepare for the possibility that this is as good as it gets." Nora spent hours with Cole every day, helping with physical therapy, running through memory exercises, reading letters he'd sent home from deployments, trying to trigger recall of who he'd been before captivity stole parts of his mind. Some days were better than others. Some days Cole recognized her immediately, and they could talk about havoc in the case and plans for when he was released from care. Other days he looked at her like a stranger and asked when his sister was coming to visit. Those days were harder. 3 months into recovery, Cole had a good day, clear-minded, present, almost like the brother she remembered. "I want to see Havoc," he said. "The hospital doesn't allow." "I don't care what they allow. I've been in captivity for 18 months. I've earned the right to see my dog." Nora made it happen. Called in favors. Got special permission. Arranged for Havoc to be brought to the hospital for a supervised visit in a private courtyard usually reserved for staff breaks. Yates brought him. The old staff sergeant had retired like he'd promised. Spent his days volunteering at an animal shelter and his nights trying to forget 18 months of looking the other way while dogs suffered. "He's been good," Yates said, holding Havoc's leash. "Responds to commands. Doesn't show aggression. But he's still skittish. Loud noises set him off. Sudden movements make him flinch. The trauma's still there." "Will he recognize Cole?" "Only one way to find out." They brought Cole out in a wheelchair. He was thinner than he should be, paler. But his eyes were focused and his hands were steady, and when he saw Havoc, something shifted in his expression. "Hey boy," Cole said quietly. "Been a while." Havoc's ears came up. His head tilted. For a moment he just stared, processing, calculating, deciding if this was real or another trick. Then recognition hit. The dog surged forward. Yates almost lost the leash. Havoc crossed the courtyard in 3 bounds and skidded to a stop in front of Cole's wheelchair. Sat, trembling, making a sound that was half whine, half cry. Cole reached out, put his hand on Havoc's head. The dog pressed into the touch like someone drowning, finally finding air. "I know," Cole said. "I know it was bad, but we made it. Both of us. We made it." Havoc crawled into Cole's lap. 95 pounds of Belgian Malinois trying to become as small as possible so he could get closer to the person he'd waited 18 months to see again. Cole wrapped his arms around the dog, buried his face in Havoc's fur, and for the first time since Nora had found him in that cell, her brother cried. Not from pain, not from trauma, from relief, from joy, from the bone-deep satisfaction of being reunited with family. Nora turned away, gave them privacy, felt her own tears tracking down her face and didn't bother wiping them away. Yates stood next to her. "That dog's going to save his life," the old staff sergeant said quietly. Might have already saved it. Sometimes love is the best medicine we've got. The visit lasted an hour. Then the nurses insisted Cole needed rest. Havoc didn't want to leave. Planted himself. Refused commands. Only moved when Cole told him it was okay. That he'd see him again soon. That this wasn't goodbye. As they led Havoc away, the dog kept looking back. Checking. Making sure Cole was still there. Still real. Still alive. I want him with me, Cole said after Havoc was gone. When I get out of here, when I'm cleared for discharge, I want Havoc with me full time. He's technically still military property, Nora said, still assigned to the K-9 program. Then unassign him, transfer custody. Do whatever you have to do. That dog is mine, I'm his, we belong together. Nora made it happen, filed paperwork, called JAG, made the case that Havoc was too traumatized for continued military service, and his best chance at rehabilitation was assignment to his original handler. The request was denied. Havoc was a valuable asset, trained at significant cost, would be reassigned to a new handler once behavioral assessments cleared him for duty. Nora appealed, got denied again, so she went public, gave an interview to a military newspaper, told Cole's story, told Havoc's story, told how the system had failed both of them and was now trying to separate them again. The story went viral. Social media picked it up. News networks ran segments. Veterans groups started online petitions. Within a week, there were 50,000 signatures demanding Havoc be released to Cole's custody. Within 2 weeks, there were 200,000. On the 18th day, the Navy issued a statement. Effective immediately, military working dog Havoc was being medically retired from service and reassigned to former handler Staff Sergeant Cole Calloway for permanent custody. The paperwork was signed by the Secretary of the Navy himself. Public pressure worked when regulations wouldn't. Cole's discharge from the hospital came 4 months after he had been admitted. He could walk without assistance, could speak in complete sentences most of the time, could manage basic self-care with minimal help. The doctors called it a remarkable recovery given the extent of his injuries. Nora called it stubborn determination inherited from 2 generations of Marines who didn't know how to quit. They held a small ceremony at the hospital. Nothing official, just Nora and Holt and Fisher and Yates and Dr. Brennan, who turned state's evidence and was now under witness protection waiting for the trial. And Havoc, of course Havoc, the dog hadn't left Cole's side since the custody transfer was approved. Slept next to his bed, walked beside his wheelchair, alerted nurses when Cole's vitals spiked or when he seemed confused or disoriented, became not just a companion, but a service animal by instinct rather than formal training. You ready? Nora asked Cole. Her brother looked around the hospital room he'd lived in for 4 months. Been ready since the day I got here. Let's go home. Home was a small house Nora had rented in Point Loma. 2 bedrooms, fenced yard for Havoc, close enough to the VA hospital for Cole's ongoing therapy appointments. Far enough from base that they didn't have to think about the military every time they looked out the window. They settled into a routine. Cole's physical therapy every morning, cognitive exercises in the afternoon, walks with Havoc in the evening, slow rebuilding of a life that had been interrupted by torture and trauma. Some days were good, some days weren't, but they were all better than what had come before. The trial started on a Monday in October. Federal courthouse in downtown San Diego. Media circus outside. Protesters demanding justice. Veterans holding signs supporting Cole. Defense contractors holding signs supporting Harker. The prosecution's case took 3 weeks to present. Testimony from Yates, from Brennan, from Nora and Fisher and Holt, from veterinarians who'd examined the dogs recovered from the warehouse and documented injuries consistent with systematic abuse. From Cole, who sat in the witness box for 2 days and described 18 months of captivity in detail so precise and painful that several jurors cried. Harker's defense attacked everything, called the evidence circumstantial, called the witnesses biased, called Cole's testimony unreliable due to brain injury, called the whole investigation a vendetta orchestrated by a grieving sister who couldn't accept her brother's accidental death. The jury deliberated for 6 hours, guilty, on all 17 counts. Sentencing was set for 2 weeks later. Harker showed no emotion when the verdict was read, just stood, nodded to his lawyers, walked out flanked by federal marshals who'd take him back to the detention center where he'd wait for judgment. Nora watched him go, felt something that might have been satisfaction, but wasn't quite. Justice served was different than justice completed. The trial was over, but the consequences would ripple outward for years. Vickers' trial came 3 weeks later. Faster proceedings because he'd taken a plea deal, pled guilty to conspiracy and obstruction in exchange for reduced charges on the murder counts. Would serve 15 years minimum. Could be out in 10 with good behavior. Not enough. Would never be enough. But more than nothing. The sentencing hearing for Harker was scheduled for a Thursday morning. Nora attended with Cole. They sat in the front row. Havoc between them. The dog wore a service animal vest, and nobody questioned his presence. The judge read the charges, the convictions, the sentencing guidelines, then asked if Harker had anything to say. Harker stood, looked at Cole, at Nora, at the courtroom full of people who'd come to watch him fall. "I served this country for 37 years, he said. Fought in jungles and deserts, lost friends, lost pieces of myself. Everything I did in service to national security and military readiness. If my methods were harsh, it's because the world is harsh. If my program caused pain, it's because preparing for war requires sacrifice." He paused. "I don't apologize for trying to make this country safer. I don't apologize for pushing boundaries to gain tactical advantages. I apologize that some people couldn't understand the bigger picture, couldn't see past individual suffering to collective benefit." The judge's expression didn't change. "Mr. Harker, you kidnapped a United States Marine, held him prisoner for 18 months, tortured him, murdered 2 other service members who tried to report your crimes, systematically abused animals in your care, defrauded the Department of Defense of millions of dollars, and you have the audacity to stand here and claim you were serving your country. I was serving a vision of what this country's military could become. You were serving yourself, your ego, your bank account." The judge looked down at the papers in front of her. "Raymond Harker, this court sentences you to 35 years in federal prison without possibility of parole. In addition, you are stripped of all military honors, pensions, and benefits. You will pay restitution to the families of your victims and to the Department of Defense for damages incurred through your fraudulent contracts. And you will be prohibited from any future involvement with defense contracting or animal care in any capacity." She brought down the gavel. "This court is adjourned." Marshals took Harker away. He didn't look back. Outside the courthouse, media swarmed. Nora gave a brief statement, thanked NCIS, thanked everyone who'd supported Cole's recovery, thanked Havoc for being the witness that started everything. A reporter asked if she felt justice had been served. "Justice is never finished," Nora said. "It's ongoing, but yes, today feels like progress." 6 weeks later, Nora received a medal, Navy Cross for Valor during the investigation, presented by the Secretary of the Navy in a ceremony at the Pentagon. Cole was there, still recovering but stronger every day. Havoc was there too, wearing a medal of his own, specially commissioned, for service and loyalty above and beyond. The Secretary made a speech about honor and dedication, about refusing to give up when the system said stop, about standing up for what's right even when it costs everything. Then he announced a new program, the Calloway Protocol, procedures for protecting military working dogs when their handlers are killed in action, requirements for humane treatment during training and service, prohibitions on using MWDs for experimental programs without strict oversight and approval. Named after Cole, inspired by Havoc, designed to prevent what happened to them from happening to anyone else. It wasn't enough to undo the past, but it was something, maybe enough to change the future. That night, Nora and Cole sat on the porch of their rental house. Havoc lay between them. The sun was setting over Point Loma. The ocean smell drifted on the breeze. Somewhere in the distance, a helicopter passed overhead. Military exercises, training that never stopped. "You ever think about going back?" Cole asked. "To active duty, to the life you had before all this?" "Sometimes." "You?" "Can't. Medical discharge is permanent. Brain damage means I'll never be cleared for combat operations again." He was quiet for a moment. "But honestly, I don't think I want to go back. Not to that world. Not after seeing what it can become when good intentions twist into something ugly." "What do you want?" "This, right here. You, Havoc. A place where nobody's torturing anything and nobody's getting rich off suffering. Maybe that makes me soft. Maybe that means Harker won something by breaking me." "You're not broken," Nora said. "You're different. There's a distinction." "Am I?" "Yeah. Broken things can't heal. Different things adapt." Cole smiled. When did you get philosophical? When I spent 4 months watching you fight your way back from hell. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sunset, watching Havoc's ears track sounds in the neighborhood, watching the world turn without them having to fight it for once. Nora's phone buzzed. Text message, unknown number. She almost ignored it, almost deleted it without reading, but something made her look. The message was short, direct. Your brother found my network. You found one facility, 5 to go. TikTok, Captain. Attached was an image, a map, 6 locations marked in red across the southwestern United States. 5 of them still active, still operating, still doing to other people and other animals what had been done to Cole and Havoc. Nora stared at the message, felt anger surge, then calculation, then determination. She looked at Cole. There are more facilities, 5 of them, still running, still torturing dogs, and God knows what else. Cole's expression hardened. Harker's network. Harker's in prison, but whoever sent this message knows about the network, knows we found one location, wants us to find the others. Could be a trap. Could be someone trying to lure you into danger. Could be, or could be, someone on the inside who wants out. Someone who knows they can't stop this alone, but thinks we might be able to help. Cole looked at Havoc. The dog was watching them both, alert, ready, like he knew something was changing. If you go after these facilities, it'll be dangerous, Cole said. Harker might be locked up, but his associates aren't. His contractors, his clients, people with money and power who don't want their involvement exposed. I know, and you're going anyway. I didn't go through all this just to stop at one facility. Not when there are 4 more dogs like Havoc being tortured right now. Not when there are people being held prisoner because they tried to do the right thing. Cole nodded slowly. Then I'm coming with you. You're not cleared for... I don't care what I'm cleared for. This is my fight too. Maybe more than yours. I'm the one they held for 18 months. I'm the one who knows what it's like in those cells. You need me. Nora wanted to argue, wanted to protect him, wanted to tell him he'd done enough and deserved to rest. But she looked at his eyes and saw the same determination she'd seen in the mirror every morning since this started. The same refusal to back down. The same conviction that some things mattered more than safety or comfort or the easy path. All right, she said. We do this together, but we do it smart. We build a team. We gather evidence. We don't rush in like cowboys and get ourselves killed. Agreed. And we bring Havoc. Cole scratched behind Havoc's ears. The dog leaned into the touch. Content, trusting. Wouldn't dream of leaving him behind. He's earned the right to see this through. Nora stood, walked to the edge of the porch, looked out at the darkening sky. 5 facilities, 5 chances to finish what Cole had started. 5 opportunities to save dogs and people who needed saving. 5 ways this could go horribly wrong, but also 5 ways to make sure Harker's network died completely. 5 ways to prove that torture and abuse and profit-driven cruelty couldn't hide forever. 5 ways to honor every person and every animal who'd suffered while good people looked away. She turned back to Cole. When do we start? Cole smiled, first genuine smile she'd seen from him in months. Soon as you're ready. I'm ready now. Then we start now. He stood, wavered slightly, caught his balance. But first we need to make a call, get the team back together, Holt and Fisher and anyone else who wants to finish this fight. They've already risked enough, already put their careers on the line. We can't ask them to do it again. We're not asking, we're offering them a choice. Some people walk away when the fight gets hard, others double down. Our team is the doubling down kind. He was right. Nora knew it even before she started making calls. Holt answered on the first ring. Tell me you're not thinking what I think you're thinking. There are 5 more facilities. We're going after them. A pause, then, when do we leave? Fisher was in. Yates was in. Even Brennan from Witness Protection sent a message saying she'd provide intelligence and support however she could. The team that had broken Harker's first facility was ready to break the rest. It would take months, maybe years, would be dangerous and illegal, and likely to end with court-martial or worse if they weren't careful. But it was right. And sometimes right mattered more than safe. Nora looked at the map on her phone. 5 locations, 5 challenges, 5 chances to make a difference. She typed a response to the unknown number. We're coming. Tell whoever's inside to hold on. Help is on the way. The response came immediately. They've been holding on for a long time. Don't make them wait much longer. Nora pocketed her phone, looked at Cole, at Havoc, at the darkening sky and the future it held. Ready to work, Hav? She asked the dog. Havoc barked once. Sharp, certain, ready. Cole put his hand on Nora's shoulder. Callaways don't quit. No, Nora agreed, we don't. They went inside, started planning, started building the case for the next facility, started doing what they had been trained to do: identify the mission, assess the risks, and execute with precision. Outside, the California night settled over Point Loma. The ocean kept rolling. The world kept turning. And somewhere in the darkness, 5 facilities waited for the team that had already proven they couldn't be stopped. The fight wasn't over. It was just beginning. And this time they knew exactly what they were up against.